Hey, you ever thought about taking drugs?
What's up, fellow psychonauts? Now, I'm a 90s kid, so I have a deep nostalgia for 90s vibes and 90s aesthetic. I mean, I strive to meet the fashion aesthetic of Gert from Stay Alert. You remember those? Stay alert, stay safe. Anyways, I recently came across these old PSAs by Concerned Children's Advertisers, and they used to play on repeat back in Ontario where I was raised. These things are just hammered in my brain. Concerned Children's Advertisers uploaded all of their PSAs onto a YouTube channel just dumped there 13 years ago, and I was surprised to find that basically half of them were anti-drug PSAs. They're also responsible for writing this absolute gem of a bop.
Gotta balance food and activity, working together, the body electricity.
Classic. So I arranged these drug PSAs from least harmful to most harmful in my opinion. So we could go through it together, make some jokes and critiques. Alright, let's do it. This one I almost memorized because I watched it so often when I was a kid. But before a couple days ago, I haven't seen it for like 20 years.
It sure looks like something to eat, doesn't it? I wonder how this works.
Hey, don't touch it if you don't know what it is.
Why? What's wrong?
Well, I'm not sure. I just think that if we don't really know what it is, we shouldn't touch it. It might hurt us.
Well, then what should we do?
This one has a pretty good message. It's not saying that cheese is bad, cheese being the metaphor for drugs. It's saying that you shouldn't consume something that you found because you're not sure if it's the thing you think it is. And yeah, that's pretty good advice. The first time I did MDMA, I didn't really feel very much and it was kind of a crappy time. Someone just gave it to me at a party. And in hindsight, for all I know, that wasn't even MDMA. I don't know what dose I took. I wouldn't be able to reproduce that experience whatsoever because I have no frame of reference of that was the substance I had or how much I took. So yeah, pretty good messaging. You know, cheese isn't inherently bad, but just finding cheese could be dangerous.
Then he saw some big mushrooms growing by a tree. But Daddy said, "Careful, baby, some mushrooms are not for raccoons." And just like animals in the forest, you need to be careful too. Only take medicines or drugs if Mommy or Daddy says it's all right. And never take drugs from people you don't know.
This one also is pretty freaking wholesome. Like, great storyteller, fantastic voice. Please be my mom. I'm just kidding, I love you, Mom. Again, this is good advice because she's not saying drugs are bad. She's saying that some drugs can be harmful in certain situations and that you should be able to make an informed decision before taking these substances. Especially because this PSA seems to be geared toward children and their younger audience. Children cannot make these informed decisions, so it's best to seek an authority who knows these substances better. I love how she assumes that mushrooms are drugs. Like, they're also a food, you know that, right? Baby raccoon was about to trip balls. Thanks, Dad. Alright, now we're gonna move on to more fear-mongering PSAs.
Be good now.
Someone's watching your every action. Be aware. Be wise.
This PSA I agree with. Children do tend to mimic adults and their parents. I know when I was a kid, I liked to play pretend of whatever adults were doing because I thought it made me more mature. Especially when kids aren't yet able to comprehend the risks of these substances. It's best to do it away from kids and not expose them to it until they're of an age where you can explain the nuance of these substances. But you can see hints of fear-mongering here when they show the drug use in black and white. Even though it looks like they're having a good time, they're trying to make it look a little scary, like it's something that's actually bad, like adults do this thing that's bad when that's not really the case. It's not inherently bad. Of this kid watching these parents, they're gonna learn how to pour a shot sloppily. See, this one, like, again, it's trying to be wholesome. It's trying to be like, be there for your friends. But honestly, trying to stop your friends from doing drugs usually results in further alienating them. You should more be addressing why they feel like they need to take drugs in the first place. But again, there are usually reasons why people return to these substances. I mean, people don't turn to feel-good substances unless they were already feeling bad to begin with. on some level. They're saying stop your friend from doing drugs. This is classic drug war lingo for drugs are the illegal dangerous substances, whereas pharmaceuticals and legal substances, that's something else. That's not drugs. That's a nitpick that's always bothered me. But yeah, any sort of sympathizing that this PSA did to drug users is immediately thrown out the window with this next one.
We're having fun being cool, and he's just into different stuff. I'm into sports. Well, I used to be into sports, but now, guys like him, they don't like to party like we do. You know, we're having a lot of fun.
Truth is, there's a million things to do that are more fun than sitting around getting stoned.
Yeah.
Okay, so we went from drug users need our sympathy to drug users are losers very quickly. Here they're associating smoking pot with burping, not liking to do sports or do anything, being forgetful and stuff like that. I mean, this kid's like 13 years old in his mom's car. Like, where did they get so many joints? They're all lighting up their own individual ones. Like, damn. But these bad attitudes are not inherent in people who smoke pot. You can like to play sports and smoke pot, and other people may still be jerks and, you know, not do drugs. They're not inherent to each other, you know? As a pot smoker, I really don't like this characterization that automatically makes you a lazy loser. Whatever that means. Not fantastic representation there. Oh, but it just gets so much worse from here. Let's get into this next one.
You ever thought about taking drugs?
I don't know. Well, I never really thought about it.
Think hard. The first hit's free, but you find me when you need more. The choice is yours.
What do you think? Nah, this jerk's not worth the time.
A message from Concerned Children's Advertisers.
Okay, so where do I even begin with this one? This back alley puppet show just looks so scary. They needed to show the drug dealer in a leather jacket so you know that they're bad news, right? If anybody tried to sell you drugs that weren't in a baggie and just like open needles in their hands, like just turn the fuck away. And then when they show these drugs, they're flashing all these images of famous people who used drugs or died from using drugs, including Jimi Hendrix, who actually overdosed on legal pharmaceuticals and alcohol. And just as a cherry on top, the drug dealer takes off his sunglasses at the end, revealing that he's like literally a demon, literally demonizing drug users. Pretty freaking direct.
Ever wonder what a bag of crack looks like? In the last 2 years, over 5,000 people in Canada and the US have died from using crack or cocaine. Do yourself a favor. Think about it.
I guarantee as a kid, I was not wondering what a bag of crack looked like. This one I find particularly gross because it's saying directly that these drugs will kill you, which is really unfair because it doesn't address the factors that lead to overdose, which is not knowing what the substance you're taking, not knowing what your dose is, and social stigma. Because drugs aren't regulated, you have to kind of take your friends or your dealer's word for it when you get these substances because tester kits aren't really widely available, but I highly recommend it to anybody who's using substances. Someone will sell you a drug saying it's one thing, but really you have no idea if it is that thing or if it's mixed with anything else. This is very evident in the recent spike in overdoses due to fentanyl. Fentanyl is mixed in to make the substance cheaper and more powerful at the same time, which leads people to overdose very easily. It's harder to measure and you don't know if fentanyl is in your substance. Also, social alienation largely contribute to overdoses. I have heard far too many stories of people who could have called for help, could have called the ambulance, but was too afraid that they would send police too. A couple of apartments ago, I had a neighbor who I bumped into the halls a lot, and one night I heard that they had an overdose because I could hear voices through the walls or whatever. And when police came, they were interrogating this person when they were just trying to get help, and they were obviously actually scared to tell them what they were on or how much they took, because cops can fucking raid your house, steal your stash, put you behind bars. A lot of drug users are struggling financially or otherwise in vulnerable situations, because the last thing you want when you need help is police officers. There are initiatives for safe injection sites so that people will get pure substances at the dose that they need to get their fix. But time and time again, our governments are blocking those efforts and doing everything in their power to make these substances remain as dangerous as they are. In short, it's not just substances that are dangerous, it's also the conditions in which we take them. But I saved the best, or I should say the worst, for last. And this one highly influenced me, so let's watch it together.
Your brain is a marvel of technology. But when you take drugs, you alter your brain. You change thinking patterns. You distort perception. And eventually, your brain just won't be the same. Think about it while you still can.
This PSA takes the cake in terms of misinformation and fear-mongering. Everything from the music to the way that they're showing how the brain works is made to scare people away from doing drugs. The metaphor is that our brain is circuitry, and taking drugs is like taking wire cutters to your brain. That's not how drugs work. This reminds me a lot of this myth that I heard when I was younger, that magic mushrooms make you hallucinate because it makes your brain bleed. Again, not true. Drugs work by binding to receptors. There are risks and benefits to that, but drugs don't destroy your brain. This is dangerous misinformation on a few levels. It's saying that if you're addicted to drugs, that your brain is fried and will never be the same. They even say, think about it while you still can, again implying that these drugs will kill you. And all this other stuff about like altering your perception, changing thinking patterns, those aren't inherently harmful. It could be actually a good exercise to distort your perception from time to time. But again, it's implying that how these drugs work is by damaging your brain, which is absolutely false. Misinformation like this is what further alienates people from getting proper information, because when you fearmonger so hard, people don't believe what you're saying anymore. And it leads to a boomerang effect that was notable in the DARE program, where introducing how harmful and bad these drugs are to kids actually leads more kids to doing them. They don't trust what you're saying because you're obviously bullshitting. We need to have a more nuanced approach to talking about drugs. Like, yes, kids shouldn't be doing heroin, but that doesn't mean we should say that you're bad for doing it, or that you ruined your life, or any of this other fear-mongering that alienates people and ultimately does more harm than good. You want to tell people what are the harms and benefits of each substance and the method of ingestion, because it's not just the substance, but it's like how you do it too. You know, cocaine and heroin, they have medical benefits that are noted and acknowledged. Something that underlines all these PSAs, and then is found in some of their other PSAs, such as with the TV and you can choose.
You can choose to run wild.
You can choose not to watch.
The choice is yours.
They put a high emphasis on individual choice, that you get to choose what you do with your own body. And to a large degree, I agree with that. You know, you do have to make your own decisions, but they don't really acknowledge societal conditions that lead people to do drugs in the first place. They're trying to make it sound like it's all poor decision making, when they don't address the real struggles of poverty. Poverty is a huge contributing factor to people becoming dependent on these substances. People will turn to methods of coping in hard to cope with situations. Poverty is a very difficult thing to cope with, and drugs often allow that struggle to be more manageable to live with. And also keeps people in the cycle of poverty as well, because drugs aren't free.
First it's free.
I just find it ironic that in one PSA they're saying you can't trust everything that you see on TV and that you need to think critically.
That's why it's good to think about what you're watching on TV and ask questions, kind of like you just did.
And then in the next PSA, they'll give you this gross fear-mongering misinformation that drugs will destroy your brain, make you a loser, and kill you. And you know what? Smoking weed doesn't make you inherently a loser. I mean, I smoke weed, and I'm not a loser. Well, concerned children's advertisers, your PSAs didn't work. I love smoking weed, and if you would like to join me, I'll wait for you to grab your weed stuff so we can smoke together. While you're grabbing your stuff, I just wanted to remind you to please subscribe. I'm planning a big video for next week. I know I said that last week, but I actually mean it this time. Trust me, it'll be worth the wait. Like the video so it helps me get put into YouTube's algorithm. Comment down below that drugs aren't inherently bad. As always, these videos were brought to you by the lovely patrons over at Patreon. I really can't thank you all enough. If you would like your own entry being featured in next week's video, all you gotta do is sign up at any tier over at Patreon. Or if you would like to contribute another way, you can make a one-time donation of like $1 at paypal.me/interbeingart. Now, with all that being said, thank you all for watching.
Electricity, but there's a problem here that'll make your motor stop. When you just sit around, the engine will flop. So you gotta get moving for the work to be done. If you lay on a couch, you won't be any fun. If you just sit, your gut will be blue. If you sit,
Trip safe, fellow psychonauts.
You gotta balance food and activity, working together, the body electricity.
Now, with all that out of the way, Jesus Christ.
Working together, the body electricity.
I actually got pretty high from that.